It's Premier League All Access instant transfer window reaction with the deadline guru Alex Crook and me, Sam Matterface. Crook has been very busy. He's just about to get hold of his first pint in about 3 months because he's celebrating the end of the window. And Crookie, what a record-breaking window it was. We're somewhere between 2.6 and 2.7 billion quid spent, a record 125 million quid lashed out on Alexander Isak. For context, La Liga's net spend is less than 50 million. I mean, that is absolutely startling, isn't it? I mean, it was carnage right to the very end. What was it like for you?
It's the window that kept giving. So many sagas, soap operas, use whatever terminology you want. Alexander Isak kept us on the edge of our sofas right up until the night before deadline day, the early hours of deadline day, when we found out that £125 million British record fee had been agreed. Johan Wissa, likewise, was he going to get his move from Brentford, or would the Bees stand firm? I think in the end, Brentford will probably claim a victory with the fee they agreed, 50 million plus £5 million in add-ons for a player who is 29 years of age. Not much sell-on value there as far as Newcastle are concerned. We had the Marc Guehi situation that kept us going right up until the final hours of the window. That was a real roller coaster on deadline day. And then you had clubs like Manchester United leaving it until the final day of the window to try and solve their goalkeeping situation. Kobbie Mainoo was a story towards the end of the window. Would he stay or would he go? Chelsea have been busy again. Daniel Levy doing what Daniel Levy does and trying to get deals done on deadline day. And then you look at teams like Sunderland, actually, it maybe has gone a bit under the radar because the big clubs have spent so much money in this window, but they've had a real go at staying in the Premier League. I fancied them. You'll remember when we did the season preview podcast, I fancy them even more now to stay up.
Yeah, we broke a couple of stories about Sunderland on deadline day as well. They picked up Brian Brobby from Ajax. Number 9 will play through the middle, maybe add to their attacking battalion. They've got quite a good set of attackers now. They sent Marc Guehi back to Chelsea because they've got a problem with Delap and Cole Palmer, and they've sold Nicholas Jackson, sort of, have they? Option obligation to Bayern Munich, although it was touch and go at one stage. Should we tell everybody what we were doing last night when we found out about the Isak transfer? So I'd made you dinner. We're downstairs.
Mrs. Matterface have made me dinner, and she not.
All right, okay. I heated it up and cooked the pasta, and we were drinking quite large portions of whiskey in my living room, and we were watching Match of the Day. Yes, I think was it Match of the Day? It might have been towards the end of Match of the Day.
Yeah, Match of the Day, yeah.
And we were exchanging messages. And you found out, you got the text at just the moment. It must have been, a couple of seconds to midnight or something like that. And we're like, oh, my God, it started already. And it just didn't stop. It was just a roller coaster of a day right from the very moment. And we'll talk a little bit about Isak in just a second. But I think that just sort of identified the disruption and the problems that managers have got with this window shutting so late into the season. 3 games in, squads are still not settled. It's been going on for ages, but when there's as much carnage as there was in the last week of this window, you can understand why people were turning around. And a lot of people were saying it today. You can't keep doing this. You can't keep going into the start of a season where you've got players potentially moving all over the place for 3 weeks into the campaign.
And you've got players basically making themselves unavailable for selection. Alexander Isak did that for Newcastle's first 3 games. Johan Wissa, likewise for Brentford. Emi Martinez, the forgotten man of deadline day, he missed Aston Villa's heavy defeat at home to Palace because he thought he might end up at Manchester United. Clearly, they had other ideas in the end. I've got to say, speaking even to senior figures at Liverpool, even they say it's gone on 2 weeks too long. These deals should have been done earlier. The window should have been closed before the first ball of the season had been kicked.
Okay, so Isak went on the day of the deadline. Guehi, of course, all that went down to the deadline as well. Now, I heard from a senior source at Crystal Palace that there was outrageous behaviour in the background by Liverpool. Isak and Guehi both playing the game in different ways, but under assurances always that it would happen very late. Did Liverpool always know that they were going to get this done?
I don't know about that because, again, speaking to sources at Anfield as late as Thursday last week, they certainly weren't confident that Alexander Isak would happen. I think they needed Newcastle to get those two forwards in. They did that with a record signing of Nick Voltemada and obviously Wissa coming on deadline day as well. And then they needed Newcastle to reduce their asking price because I've been saying all the way along, they're not going to pay as much as £130 million for Isak. They're certainly not going to pay 150 million, which was the figure Newcastle were quoting much earlier in the summer. In the end, it's 125 million. Isak has done his bit by waiving £5 million in loyalty payments. Not that he showed a lot of loyalty this summer, so Newcastle can dress it up as 130 million pound, but it is 125 is the record fee, and that's guaranteed. There's no add-ons included in the deal.
You can understand why Liverpool wanted Guehi, why Liverpool wanted Isak. Guehi because they're in a situation with Konate and Van Dijk. They don't have the backup. Quansah's already gone. Joe Gomez played well the other day, but he's injury prone. They've got a young centre-back in Leone who will develop into a first-team player, but not just yet. It's almost future-proofing. And I can see Guehi being a kind of person that they envisage would be a captain going forward. They may well go in for him again later, maybe in January, maybe as a free transfer. But this move collapsed right at the very last on deadline day because you got Julio, who was supposed to be the replacement at Palace, ended up going to West Ham. That meant that they were left short. They went scrambling around trying to get hold of somebody else. They didn't quite manage it. And as a result, Oliver Glasner was like, I need to have my full complement of defenders, otherwise I can't go forward. And as a result, in the end, they decided that they would pull the plug on the move. And even though he did a Liverpool medical, he's still a Crystal Palace player after the deadline. Isak, slightly different situation because there'll be a lot of people who are looking at their roster and saying, you've just signed Ekitike, why do you need Isak as well? Well, the answer is pretty clear. It's because they want to have extra backup. They want to have the ability to rotate. They did lose a couple of players, obviously, in the summer, and sadly, to tragic passing of Diogo Jota as well. But Ekitike has started really well playing centrally. They're not going to play 4-4-2. I wouldn't have thought so. Not many people do that now, especially because you've two wingers will be Gakpo and Salah, and with all due respect, that doesn't add much protection. If Liverpool have had an issue at the beginning of the season, that's what it's been. They usually play 4-3-3. I can see a scenario where they play two inside forwards, Ekitike and Salah, behind the main striker, Alexander Isak. He tends to drift over to the left anyway, Ekitike. So it's not an unusual position to him. But it does mean a slight adjustment to a role to a player who has started very, very well at Anfield.
Yeah, and you can see what the Liverpool fans think of him already. They were singing his name at the end of that 1-0 win that we were at against Arsenal at the weekend. He was dancing along. I spoke to him in the tunnel. He's just been called up by France. All seems very well in his world. But he would have been aware that this Isak deal was likely to happen. I think Virgil van Dijk has known it's likely to happen from when I spoke to him after the Community Shield. And he questioned me when I said they've got plenty of attacking options. They've obviously lost Jota in horrendous circumstances. They've decided to cash in on Ruben Diaz, thinking that the value on offer there was too good to turn down. I think Darwin Nunez was always going to leave. So it does leave them a little bit short-handed. And you look at a front three now. I do think a front three of Salah, Isak and Ekitike could work. And then you've got Cody Gakpo as the fourth choice as well. So Jim White has been telling me all day, actually, they're going to go unbeaten, Liverpool. They're going to be the new Invincibles. I'm not completely sold on that. I don't think they've been great so far, but they've still won their first 3 games of the season. But what I think we can say is at the moment, you've got to make them real favourites to reclaim that Premier League title, because you look at what they've done and what Manchester City have done, for example. I've been much more impressed with Liverpool's signings this window than I have with City's.
Okay, let's move on from Liverpool and just look at some of the other big deals. I mean, Alexander Isak, 125 million. Florian Wirtz, 116 million. Hugo Ekitike, 79 million. They all went to the same place. They're quite rich at Anfield. Victor Gyökeres at Arsenal, 63 million. Benjamin Šeško's gone to Manchester United for 67. And Bumo, 71 million all in from Brentford to Manchester United. Matthias Cunha to Manchester United. So 3 big transfers to Man United, 3 big transfers to Liverpool, 1 to Arsenal, another 1 to Arsenal in Eberechi Eze. And then Voltemada to Newcastle from Stuttgart. João Pedro to Chelsea, 60 million. There's the top 10 signings in the summer transfer window. Who spent their money the wisest?
That's a brilliant question. I mean, if you're asking me who's won the transfer window, and you've got to be careful because I think this time last year we said West Ham and had a very good window and it's been a disaster ever since. But Liverpool, to do what Fergie used to do on a regular basis at Manchester United, what Pep Guardiola didn't do this time last year, and I think it's still costing City, they've strengthened from a position of power. They were a very good team anyway under Arne Slot. They've obviously changed the way they play a bit. I think Kirkez is an upgrade on Andy Robertson, but it's been a good idea to keep him around. There was a stage when maybe he would leave and join Atletico Madrid. I think Frimpong gives a different option down that right-hand side to Conor Bradley. Haven't really found the like-for-like replacement for Trent Alexander-Arnold, but that's difficult to do. I think Ekitike is an upgrade on Darwin Nunez, and I would say that Isak is an upgrade as well on Luis Diaz. So I think Liverpool have had a fantastic transfer window. I don't think Chelsea have had a bad one either. In terms of João Pedro is going to be a very good signing. You know that I really fancy him as a possibility of a golden boot. But they've been good sellers in this window as well. And that's what Manchester United have struggled with. Manchester United had to get rid of the bomb squad. They've managed to do that by and large. But Rashford is only on loan. So is Jadon Sancho, albeit with Villa paying the bulk of his wages. They've taken a massive hit, £60 million on Anthony. And obviously Rasmus Højlund has gone to Napoli. That's probably the best deal they've done because they've got an obligation. If Napoli qualify for the Champions League, they won't actually lose any money on Højlund when it comes to PSR. But they're just not very good at selling their players, Manchester United.
You mentioned that Chelsea are really good at selling their players. They got rid of two goalkeepers, Arriba Balaga and Petrovic. They sold Madueke. They sold somehow João Felix. They've transferred out Samuel Smith. They transferred out Dewsbury Hall, Euga Chukwu, Broja, Chukwuemeka, Nkunku, Matos. The list is almost endless. They've got rid of a lot of players. They've bought in a lot of players too. But Chelsea fans I've been speaking to today actually a little bit concerned about the situation because Delap and Palmer are injured. They look a little bit light in that area. Jackson's obviously gone as well. That means that their central attacking area is a little light. Guihu's come back from Sunderland, but he's not a very experienced Premier League campaigner and he's still a very young player. Ty George, who came off the bench on Saturday and played against Fulham for over an hour, has gone to Fulham. And they've signed Facundo Buonanotte on loan from Brighton. I think they sold Ben Chilwell to Strasbourg as well, which I think they already own. And they've Enciso's gone from Brighton to Strasbourg as well, hasn't he? I think it's an interesting little situation there. Buonanotte. I mean, well, look, you've seen a lot of him. What was he going to add? I didn't think he got into the Leicester team, did he, last year?
No, but I think that was a source of frustration, not just from Leicester fans, but actually Brighton as well. They were tearing their hair out at the lack of minutes, particularly under Ruud van Nistelrooy. He was going to go to Leeds at one stage. That was pretty much a done deal. And then Chelsea came in. Brighton made it pretty clear to me right from the off when Chelsea's interest first surfaced. We're not going to sanction a permanent deal, not even a loan with an option. We want him back. But it's difficult to see, isn't it? If he goes to Chelsea, I'm not sure he's going to get a lot of minutes, but if he does and he really tears it up there, is he going to want to go back to Brighton? Unless they qualify for the Champions League. That, for me, is one of the weirder signings of the summer. But that's what Chelsea do. They sign players from Brighton.
Yeah, I was going to say they've got a special relationship with people that Manchester United don't want and people that Brighton do want to keep. And they seem to spend a lot of money in doing both. They've signed Alejandro Garnacho, of course, as well. That was on Saturday. Newcastle, Visser and Voltemada. Lee Clark said on talkSPORT Breakfast this morning, with those two, Newcastle are in a better place than they were at the end of last season. Look, I think they've signed sensibly, but I think Alexander Isak is big shoes to fill. It's going to be very, very difficult for someone to come in and do a job that makes them better.
I think the squad is stronger, though, Sam. You know, you look
at...
I
agree with that.
Backup option might even end up being the number one. Alanga is going to add something. They've got a new defender in Malik Chow, and obviously Botman spends a lot of time injured. And they've got two strikers now who are going to stay fit and play regularly in the Premier League, whereas they didn't really have that before.
Yeah, I think the fact that both those two are regularly available, quite robust strikers, helps them. I think the system will have to change slightly because Isak was someone who would run behind. They were brilliant on the counter-attack. They used that speed. Voltemada probably slightly deeper and plays as a sort of almost number 10 figure, really. And obviously there's no room in that current system for a number 10 because they play a 4-3-3, rather attacking system, and you can't disrupt that brilliant physical midfield that they've got. Manchester City made a lot of signings, 6 in total this summer, 4 in January. That's 10 new players in the last 8 months, none of them in the top 10 outlays of the summer transfer window. I found that interesting. Pep told us on Sunday that his team were no longer in transition, which kind of suggests he's happy with the squad. Do you think he is?
It's a great question. You look at the goalkeeping situation with Donnarumma, and obviously Ederson going out. That probably is an upgrade on what we saw from Ederson last season, but you wonder where James Trafford's head is at. There's talk that İlkay Gündoğan will end up at Galatasaray. The Turkish window is open for a few days longer, but if that happens, that's another experienced player going out of the dressing room. I said it when we were on air at Anfield on Sunday. I don't really understand the recruitment. I can see what Liverpool are doing. They're buying players who are going to come into the team and instantly improve it. I'm just not sure that Manchester City have signed enough of those, and that's why I don't think they'll win the title.
I feel a bit sorry for Crystal Palace and Oliver Glasner. I think West Ham actually had a stronger end to the window than I thought they was going to have, and Graham Potter I think will be a little bit happier with the legs in midfield that he has added, and they needed that so desperately, that athleticism and dynamism that was missing. He's just now got to put the pieces of that jigsaw somehow together and get them on a run. They've got a couple of difficult fixtures to come either side of the Brentford game. I think they play Tottenham, Brentford, and then they've got another big tough game after that. It's just slipped my mind as to who it is straight away. What about Fulham? Because Marco Silva was kicking off and he was telling everybody who would listen that he needed more players. He said to me on Saturday, "I'm not in a very good mood. Don't ask me the question." They got a goalie in. They've got a couple of loans in, but not much else.
Yeah, I still think Marco Silva would have wanted more. I think Chukwueze could turn out to be a very good signing. I still worry about them at the top end of the pitch. If Rodrigo Muniz is injured, can you really rely on Raul Jimenez? I think it's been quite a frustrating window for Fulham. It's been a very frustrating window for Leeds United fans as well. They definitely haven't got enough firepower unless Dominic Calvert-Lewin can somehow get back to the Calvert-Lewin he was, 3 or 4 years ago. I think they're going to struggle. And there's a lot of Wolverhampton Wanderers fans who are very unhappy tonight. Only one signing on deadline day. Obviously, they lost Cunha, they lost Semedo, they lost Ait-Nouri. Yes, they kept Strand Larsen, and at one stage it looked like he might end up at Newcastle. But I really fear for Wolves as well. And the problem these teams I'm talking about have got, we mentioned at the top, is Sunderland. Over £100 million spent, 2 wins on the board already. They're going to be very difficult to beat at the Stadium of Light. Somebody who sees themselves as established in the Premier League is going to drop. I think it might just be Wolves.
Won't be 100% happy, but Everton, I think, will be okay with their window. I think David Moyes will be a little happier than he was a couple of weeks ago with those that he has acquired. But overall, the Premier League looks to be the place to be for top stars and great football. And it looks like there's going to be another season of absolutely roller coaster, swashbuckling football that thrives on emotion and great skill. And there's some great players to look forward to watching. No doubt the Premier League clubs have spent the most money. I just wonder whether or not you feel that they're responsible with their cash. I tell you what, that's not a question for Alex Crook. That's a question for you, listening and watching at home, and maybe start a debate online and see where it takes you. The transfer window is over. We can talk about football and nothing else for the next 4 months. Join us on Thursday when we do just that and preview all the big international games. Of course, England in action this weekend on talkSPORT.